I'd like to call to order the December 12th, 2017 Park and Recreation Commission meeting. The first item on our agenda is the roll call. Turn that over to Janet.
Yep. Commissioner Giese?
Here.
Commissioner Struther?
Here.
Commissioner Darlene?
Here.
Commissioner McCormick?
Here.
Commissioner Good?
Here.
Commissioner Burke?
Here.
Commissioner Willett?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Keeley?
Here.
Commissioner Schiefert?
Here.
Thank you, Janet. The next item is approval of the meeting agenda. If I could have somebody make a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. The second item is approval of the meeting minutes from our November 14th, 2017 meeting. If I could have a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes. The next item is community comment. Do we have anybody from the audience who has a comment? Otherwise, okay, good. Otherwise, I would go through the little spiel on that. Okay, the next item. Oh. Okay, so hang on. Let me tell you about what you can do. So we offer the time to share relevant issues or concerns. You must limit your comments to 3 minutes. And it has to be an issue or topic that's not currently on the agenda for tonight. That doesn't, okay. Okay. So we'll move on then to our reports and recommendations, and I'll turn it over to Ann for the first item.
Thank you very much, Chair McCormick. I'm pleased to present the Braemar Park Master Plan for you this evening for your review and hopefully for your recommendation. I'd like to provide just a brief overview on the process that allowed us to get to this final plan this evening. First of all, starting back in March of 2017, we did a request for proposal for urban design firms to help us through this master planning process. We received 6 proposals, and we interviewed 4 firms on May 23rd. Interview team members included Parks and Recreation Commissioners Miller, Struther, and McCormick, Edina residents Cindy Edwards, Dawn Martin, and Jeff Northrup, Edina Nordic ski coach Andy Turnbull, Edina High School Mountain Bike Club representative Tim Suddeth, Minnesota Off-Road Cyclists representative Bill Beganic, and staff members Joe Bood, Susan Foss, and myself. The firm SRF was selected by the interview team, and the SRF team partnered with Applied Ecological Services and Trail Source LLC. The master plan project budget was $55,000 with an anticipated 6 to 7 month timeline for completion. The City Council awarded the project to SRF on June 6th of 2017. We held a kickoff meeting with staff on June 14th. Stakeholder interviews and inventory and analysis were completed in June. The Parks and Recreation Commission and City Council provided feedback in July, and the first community open house was held on July 26th. The first concepts were presented to staff, the Parks and Rec Commission, and the City Council in September, and the second community open house was held on September 18th. Based on all feedback received, the draft concepts were combined into one master plan concept, and a third community open house was held on October 23rd. More modifications were made based on additional feedback, and a final master plan was completed on December 4th. As part of the community engagement for this project, 3 online surveys were conducted, along with a Speak Up Edina session. The city maintained a project website and provided regular updates and invitations via social media, Nextdoor, Twitter, Facebook, and email. The final Braemar Park Master Plan recommendation is being presented to the Parks and Recreation Commission tonight, when you will be asked to review and recommend the plan. And the City Council will be asked to approve the Braemar Park Master Plan on January 3rd. So with that, I would like to kick it off to Ken from SRF for his presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ken Griesaber with SRF Consulting Group, and I'm here to give the Park and Rec Commission a brief overview of the master plan recommendations as they've moved forward over the last 6 months. So I know, I think everybody has received a hard copy of our document, the initial front end. There are also additional appendices, Appendix A, which really summarizes all the public input, stakeholder engagement, outcomes, and there's a lot to go through and see in that. But we also have two other additional appendices that talk about more background information related to natural resources and some other things that will be more pertinent as the project moves forward towards potential implementation. So we have basically 5 chapters in the master plan. I'd like to kind of just give brief overviews of some of those recommendations. After we went through all the stakeholder engagement and attended all the public meetings, we really wanted to try to identify 5, we came up with 5 big initiatives we thought were kind of really driving a lot of the master plan recommendations. The first one was really trying to improve the connectivity of trail systems and access. We know Braemar Park has a lot of disconnected activity areas throughout the park, so we really wanted to focus on improving connectivity and of course wayfinding, which the city is really undertaking with a lot of their new park signage, which will ultimately be implemented in the park. But really after we attended the first public meeting was about trying to listen to the various stakeholder groups. So we had a lot of mountain bike representation, walkers, cross-country skiers showing up at the initial meeting. So we really wanted to try to hear what their thoughts were and ideas for really trying to accommodate them better in the park. And then there was a lot of comments about what else can we do in Braemar Park to try to improve some of the existing amenities, especially at Courtney Fields. And then natural resources, with the golf course being an Audubon certified golf course, we really wanted to extend that whole initiative into the rest of the park, so really trying to focus on how natural resources can be an integral part of all the trail and site improvements. And then this whole notion about sustainability and how can we initiate improvements that are really about being good stewardships of the land resource that Braemar Park offers to the public. So this was one of the graphics actually we shared initially, and we initially, as part of our study, looked at this in zones. Zone 1 being Courtney Fields and the athletic field building complex, and the whole notion of, well, what can we do to try not only improve Courtney Fields, but trying to create a better sense of entry to Braemar Park, especially from the frontage road. And then we also looked at the public safety, both the public works and Hennepin County facilities, and after a lot of discussion with staff in the community, we sensed there were potentially a lot of conflicts with that facility, so we really focused on how can we better utilize some of that existing oak woodland area east of the Zone 2. But then Zone 3 is really where we really try to focus our initiatives for improvements in the park, especially with getting that south connector established between the east and west sides of the park. Then, of course, trying to find new improvements for the golf course and how that can provide a trailhead for trail user groups. And then Zone 5 is really about Hillary Lane and Braemar Boulevard, and how can we make that more of a parkway type street application that can be more of a signature roadway for the park. So I'll start by just, there is an overall master plan in the document that kind of shows how all the new improvements are integrated with existing conditions in the park. But as an overall guidance to trail systems, we have about 2.5 miles of new soft surface trails, about 2 miles of hard surface trails, almost 6 miles of mountain bike trails proposed, and then we are also proposing a ski trail system, which is about 8 kilometers on the golf course. So looking at the pedestrian trail system plan, you can see there's a lot of thought that's been given to more about how we establish that south connector with the pedestrian trail system. And one of the things we're trying to focus on, not only for summer walkers but winter walkers, is accessibility. So we try to identify aligning a new trail system that's really more set back from the golf course, where there's less topography to try to overcome in terms of getting good gradients for the trail system established. And so we have about a 50-foot setback established on the east, west, and south sides of the park where it is close to the golf course. And then adjacent to the Braemar Arena, we're also proposing a trail that sneaks around the golf dome, and then up to Valley View Road, and then Braemar Boulevard, Hillary Lane provides that final connector to get around the park. So other features, one of the things we're advocating for the soft surface trail is to put down a Class 2 aggregate, which is an accessible surface. So that'd be something else that'd be proposed instead of just maintaining the existing soft dirt trails that are out there. The notion of a boardwalk. We've got quite a few feet of boardwalk to accommodate to get through some of the wetland areas, which does include some expense to get that to happen. We looked at the notion of trying to establish some overlooks on the creek watershed district area, the floodplain area. And then we also identified a little high point overlook area on the east side of the park, which can provide more of an overlook and potentially small picnic area. So moving on to the mountain bike trail system, we originally were evaluating all different scenarios for how a mountain bike trail system could evolve in the park. And we gravitated towards trying to balance accommodating trails on both the east and west sides of the park. We are proposing a portion of the trail on the south end of the park to be a joint use trail for both pedestrians and mountain bikers. We think there are plenty of good examples of that being a workable solution between the two user groups. But we've designed the trail system to have loops, so if somebody wants to bike one loop, they can keep going, or they can extend over to the east side and continue loops on that side of the park. The trailhead is proposed where the existing overflow parking lot is located now on Harris Drive, coming into the golf course is the trailhead. So I think that covers most of the initiatives that, so when we move along into design, there potentially are other initiatives for the mountain bike trail system that potentially could change. So when you're generally laying out mountain bike trails, there's a lot of field and staking work that have to occur to determine the final alignments of the trail. So working with Tim Wegner, Tim has designed mountain bike trails all over the Twin Cities and other areas in Minnesota and beyond. And so one of the things he is really advocating for is creating more of a family biking environment for mountain bikers, but then also potentially offering some challenges on either sides of the trails for more advanced riders, or looking at some more shortcut terrain that offers more steep climbing challenges for the high school kids that might want to ride and train here. So there's a multitude of different features that Tim would like to integrate in the course, but still establish 90% of the trail system to accommodate easy level riding. So for the ski trail system, we've looked at a lot of things. We actually explored some scenarios for how a snowmaking loop could happen, but that didn't seem to work well with what we were proposing. So we have identified a natural snow ski trail system, which is about 8 kilometers. We'd be advocating for both a skate and classic skate trail throughout the golf course, and then we've identified some small segments of trail within the woodland areas that can accommodate classic-only trails, but still accommodate winter walkers. So we think that's a good scenario, and hopefully we get some snow for that to happen this year. Moving on to site improvements, we did look at how we can make the golf course more usable by the general public beyond just the golf course users. And so we started looking at the parking lot, and I know there are a lot of issues with both the parking lot here and up at the arena in the field about how can we try to make the parking lots a little more user-friendly. So we did look at several things. One of the biggest ones at the golf course was accessibility. And right now the clubhouse and the restaurant areas does not have an accessible route from the parking lot. So we were looking at scenarios for how we could potentially reorganize turnaround and simplify some of the drive circulation to make it a little more user-friendly for guests as they arrive, whether you're going to the restaurant or to use the lawn court area, which will be installed as part of the golf course. And then we also look at the idea of incorporating some platform tennis and or pickleball courts. And we heard a lot of things from the public about whether pickleball courts would be more desired versus platform tennis. We sensed that there are a lot of people thought pickleball courts would be more appropriate. So we kind of left that as an and/or in the recommendations. Some other things about the notion of using permeable pavers in the parking lot, which would be, I think, a great addition not only to this parking lot, but the other one to try to deal with and address stormwater runoff. There's other things here about creating separate loading surface access to the clubhouse or to the clubhouse. But we think there are a lot of great opportunities here. Obviously, they're all about cost, but to improve the accessibility would be a great thing to do at the entry to the golf course. At Courtney Fields, we heard a lot of things from the community, especially the Baseball Association, about a lot of the improvements they want to do on baseball field number 1. And so there's a lot of plans for trying to incorporate a grandstand facility, upgraded lighting, storage areas, and so on, which we've included or incorporated in the master plan. But we also heard from the community about the notion of trying to create more amenities here, if there's a space that would allow for that. And once again, the accessibility issue was something else we tried to address, and we think there is the potential to look at a way to develop an additional trail that currently serves the access area. Looks like my pointer's not, oh, there it is. So we think there's an opportunity to develop a new trail access on the west side of the complex to actually be accessible all the way down to provide access to Field 1. And then at the same time, we looked at the idea of trying to incorporate a new play area that would serve people that are there for their kids playing baseball, but also for the surrounding neighborhood. And then continuing that trail system around the perimeter of the complex so you'd have a paved trail for people to walk around the whole ball field complex. And then moving on to Braemar Arena and the parking lot improvements, we were initially exploring some additional ideas about how to enhance the arena, and we gravitated towards more of a way to try to match some of the architectural elements that are going on with the Braemar field entry. So the notion of trying to incorporate some new revised signage, lettering for the arena, and some stainless steel grading, which is also on the Braemar field building, I think would be one way to try to update or enhance that entry. And then getting to the notion of permeable paving, which would be a fairly expensive undertaking to do, but that picture on the lower right really that's actually at French Regional Park in Plymouth. Just the notion of trying to do parking bays and permeable paving just creates a more inviting experience. And then in addition to that, I think there would be opportunities for more boulevard trees and parking lot trees throughout the parking lots just to make the whole appearance from 169 frontage a lot more inviting. And then I've seen a lot of the new signage that's going up for a lot of the parks, so I know the city is in the process of developing new signs for Braemar, so we've identified locations, and I know the city is kind of also tracking some of that. But I think there should be some additional things applied to the signage for wayfinding, arrows and directions to get people either when they arrive from the 169 frontage at the interchange or when they hit Braemar Boulevard entering the park. So I think the new signage is going to go a long way for improving wayfinding in the park. So moving on to the natural resources, Doug Mensing from Applied Ecological Services really did an assessment of some of the native plant communities within the park. And Doug feels that there are a lot of opportunities here for enhancing a lot of the natural resources, at the same trying to accommodate the trail systems. And so we kind of gravitated towards this priority system where we'd really focus on both the east and west sides of the park where the mountain bike and pedestrian trails are going in. And we really can use the development of the trail systems as a way to start the initiative for natural resources. You can all of a sudden identify zones by developing the trails. And the big one is trying to maintain this buffer with the golf course. We've identified ways for us to think about how we want to remove the buckthorn, but then also reestablish that with native vegetation so we can maintain that good buffer with the golf course and then the residents that are on the east side of the park. And then as a second priority, the small oak woodland areas as part of the golf course are also proposed to be restored. And then we also looked at the potential for restoring some prairie areas on the south end of the golf course, which would provide a little more, I guess, opportunities for the public to engage in different landscape habitats as they walk the perimeter trail system. And then lastly, looking at the wetland complexes, which aren't really accessible, and that's why they're kind of identified as a third priority. So the last piece of the puzzle is implementation and costs, and we've taken a kind of a preliminary look at what we think some of the cost investment are for the park. And there is a lot of things that have to be delved into in terms of detail for not only roadway improvements but parking improvements. But then We also know like the Edina Baseball Association is a funding partner or fundraising partner for a lot of improvements at Courtney Field. And then the Watershed District. We think the Watershed District potentially is has a role here with, especially with the permeable paving notion in the parking lots. So we think there are other opportunities for additional funding to be found outside of city sources. So when you look at it, there is a fairly large number there at the bottom of the sheet, roughly $6.5 million. But this would all be taken off bits and chunks at a time, and there's plenty of things that would have to be assessed and evaluated in more detail before anything could move forward. So that's kind of a quick summary of the plan. I'd more than happy to answer any questions or comments about the recommendations.
With the cost estimate, and you said this could be taken sort of in bits and chunks, are there pieces, though, that are dependent on each other? Like, I'm thinking in particular some of the pedestrian and hiking trail improvements. Do they tie with some of the, it looked like some of the loops involved changes to some of the roadway.
Yeah.
And are some of them linked, I guess is my question.
Yeah, we'd be advocating for developing the pedestrian soft surface trails and the mountain bike trails together as one initiative. I think the public support for having a loop trail system would be a very popular amenity that would serve a lot of different user groups. But I think while you're in there developing those trails, the mountain bike trail component should also be part of that. So if you hired a trail contractor, there's a lot of cost efficiencies, I think, for taking those two on at the same time.
So just following up to that, as I looked at it, I also thought when we're doing the trails, we need to do the natural resource improvements on those components, and wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that's where we've had actually a lot of discussion about how we can develop a plan for restoring the natural resources. And the trail system, I think development of that would allow for better or easier access to these areas. And as I indicated earlier, I think it's once you have a trail system in, like between the golf course and the trail, then all of a sudden you've got an area you can focus on for some initial improvement, especially with that buffer area. So Doug has identified some preliminary per acre costs. And the only other caveat is there's probably a 3-year time frame for maintenance beyond that initial per acre cost that you'd have to apply to that. But I think to really accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with the trail system, maintaining buffers, we really think the natural resource restoration effort should be an integral part of that effort.
Okay, good.
And Ken, maybe sticking with the cost estimate a bit, the 25% contingency design and administration, how much of that design is broadly across everything, or does it get parceled out to say, you know, there's a design for the pedestrian, there's a design for the mountain bike, and the design for this? How is that built up?
Well, typically, I mean, some of that 25% is unknowns. Yep. And so, but typically, like design administration costs will be applied per initiative, per project. Okay. The other complicating factor is, you know, if nothing happens for 2 years, then you typically want to apply that 5% inflation rate to these numbers if it's going to be like 2018 or 2019 versus 18 construction. Okay. So, and based on the level of detail or analysis that we've done, you know, with additional survey, there's, for the park, especially for Braemar Boulevard and Hillary Lane, there's wetland issues, stormwater. A lot of the stormwater infrastructure is high around the park, so do we need a lift station to get stormwater out if you propose a curb and gutter roadway? All those things would have to be evaluated in more detail.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So Ken, sticking on Braemar Boulevard, when we look at the big loop around, yes. Obviously there's that whole north end that goes along the boulevard. Right now, I don't know, let's say 30% of it is a raised walkway. Yes. And the rest is a dangerous run with traffic. But also, the Braemar Boulevard cost estimate is the largest, biggest chunk. So have you guys come up with any ideas, or have you envisioned anything where you don't have to do the entire Braemar Boulevard to get a raised, safer walkway for that kind of that dangerous section?
Yeah, and that's the kind of detail I think should be evaluated. You know, we for cost estimating purposes, put in a brand new road, curb and gutter, grade separated trail on the south side of Braemar. Now, would there be a way that you could consider potentially just curbing? There is a portion of curb along Hillary Lane now, but is there a way you could just curb one side and not the other, and not rebuild the roadway? Sure, I think there are efficiencies that could be looked at there.
Can I piggyback on that? And I brought this up in the last meeting as well. But I was curious if there's opportunity. So when you look at it around the whole area of Braemar, if you continued on in the red, and your example, your picture here, the red and then the yellow, kind of where the red and yellow connect. Actually, if they were to go on the street, there is a sidewalk. Kind of down in the gray, but the area that is actually the most dangerous, more than any of the areas here, is the small strip between the lower star here and down here, which is where you basically have to run along the frontage road.
Yes.
Or walk or whatever activity you do. Super dangerous because cars are flying because they're trying to get onto the highway there. There are sidewalks all along in the residential here as on the lower half, and then as well in the commercial. And there is a little bit of at least up on Braemar Boulevard, there's at least a shoulder you can go on, but that area there is not. So I feel like if we're looking at doing some form of sidewalk and you want to call it a loop, I mean the most dangerous part I see is that, and I mean I think there's a great opportunity to add some form of, I mean, people park there up at the ice rink year round. I mean, just having that, it looks like a short loop there, but it's pretty, it's steep and dangerous. So I just would like to make sure that if we do some form of adding of sidewalks, that we can at least look into that.
Yeah, and I know that is part of the overall city-wide sidewalk trail plan, and it does look like there's opportunities to add like a 6-foot walk. Now, whether you can set back that from the roadway, I'm not sure, but yeah, there's definitely opportunities to put that in to increase some of the connectivity to the park.
Say, Ken, if I could take you to page 8 and 9, you mentioned in your presentation that we went through a number of iterations on the mountain bike design. And could you just kind of refresh us a bit at what some of those iterations or options were and how we landed at what you have here in the current recommendation?
Yeah, so we initially presented 2 ideas to the community, and they really started with the first concept idea was trying to designate all the mountain bike trails on the east side of the park, and look at the west side of the park as more of a pedestrian-only trail system that have more of a natural resource, maybe interpretation format to it. And I think when we started looking at the land resource and the trails that we could accommodate on the east side of the park for mountain bike trails, it just wasn't getting us what we, I think, we're desiring, just to make it, you know, a worthwhile expenditure to develop trails. And I know a lot of the mountain bike community was advocating for this 10K of trail. And I think as part of the Tim's effort, we were really trying to find this balance. And so the second concept we shared was more of this shared use scenario. I'd say the only thing that's really changed that we revised was the idea of adding a loop trail for pedestrians on the west side of the park, which initially was not a continuous loop pedestrian trail. So there is opportunity for a pedestrian now to walk a little loop on the west side of the park, which we weren't proposing in the initial concept.
And was there also at one point at least some early conversation about looping it all the way around the north side as well? But was there some, from the picture at least, looks like some wetland considerations or other things?
Yeah, and so I know there's been previous studies done on the park that was advocating or recommending a boardwalk system, which would be a very expensive undertaking, and part of it was, you know, we have the residents there, and I guess we looked at the investment, and I'm sure that would be a $700,000-800,000 investment. We just thought the resource was better spent trying to establish that south connector, and then using Braemar Boulevard as kind of that north connector to connect both sides of the park. Especially, okay, we could really try to create more of a parkway type feeling for the road.
And the last piece on this picture, you mentioned the south side, the connector there on the south side being joint use. Was there any discussion, or is there anything to prevent us from separating walkers and bikers on that south side just to make sure we don't have safety issues, congestion, whatever it might be?
Yeah, there are, along the existing trail corridor, it's probably close to 12 feet, if not a little wider, existing now on the existing gravel trail. So we think there potentially is the opportunity just to create a small single track adjacent to the gravel. It gets more challenging when you enter the wetland area, and I think there's really no way to avoid, we'd recommend at least a minimum 12-foot wide boardwalk. I know Tim Wagner from Trail Source called out several examples of that in other parks that he has seen that it's worked out well. So I guess that's a concern because, you know, there might be somebody walking a dog and so on.
Yep.
But there could be something we could look at for the boardwalk. Is there a way we could create a more defined lane system or something on the boardwalk to try to separate those two user groups?
Okay, all right, thanks.
The mountain bike path along the south, is it going to be considered only one way?
No, that would be a two-way system.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Also on safety, where it crosses by the Golf Dome and that back road, if you know where I'm talking about, it looks
Across
like
Braemar.
both trails kind of cross over there. Would there be, or were you thinking, or is there any in the 30,000-foot financials of like a safety walkway or something there? Because that's a pretty dangerous stretch there.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's some sightline issues with that stretch of road, and when we're showing that crossing, there could be, you know, stop sign considerations given for that entry to try to slow the traffic as well as at Valley View. And that's something that would have to be evaluated in more detail. But I think, yeah, you should have something that's really defined in terms of a crossing there with the sight lines that are there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
I have a laundry list, so we'll go through these. Sorry. First, I'll do the easy one. So I saw you talk about lights on Field 1 at Courtney Fields. Was
Yes.
there a reason why it was only for Field 1? And the reason I asked that is because the Field 1 field is for 15 and older athletes. So I'm just wondering, the smaller fields have longer, I guess we call it shelf life, and probably have a lot more of the younger players in terms of pure numbers. So
Yeah, so the lighting rep, Musco Lighting, we had some follow-up conversations with them. They have provided quotes for upgrading the lighting on all 4 fields, and we could easily include that in the cost estimate if that was desired. But we were initially kind of focused on the Field 1 initiatives, and it seemed like it was up in the air whether that funding could be found for relamping the other 3 fields. But that was something I know was estimated with Musco Lighting.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting. I don't know if you want to keep it as an amendment. You talk about alternative funding sources with the baseball board and stuff like that. So they might be of interest to find out how that would work. I know that especially those 2 smaller fields, it would extend maybe the life of, or the amount of schedulable time if the lighting was a little bit later. Although I know that probably parents don't want their younger ones out there late playing baseball. So, but I think it'd be interesting.
Can I jump in on that one real quick,
Sure.
Matt? Give you a little update. Steal my thunder from our report later on in the evening, but we might be getting some good news tomorrow from Hennepin County on a youth sports grant. We applied for a youth sports grant with the Baseball Association, and we are feeling fairly confident that we're going to receive that grant, and that would help us replace the lighting on Field 1 and also safety netting in that area.
That's good news. Which part of that was my other thing was you talk about a playground. I guess that's between Field 3 and Field 4. Might take a pretty good poke, but is there thoughts about putting some safety in front of that? It is in foul ball territory, and I got a 4-year-old that would be on that playground and could easily get plunked in the head by kids hitting a foul ball. So just wondered if that was something that was considered there.
Yeah, there is, potentially for some, I guess for foul balls, but they would have to be hit pretty hard, I think, to get close to that play area. We were kind of looking at that maintenance facility as kind of the buffer.
It's not as much from the Little League field. It's the
larger field.
The field, the 275 field. I mean,
Yep.
they have 14-year-old kids that are using. I was just down there this summer and watched a game. I mean, I saw kids go hit it halfway up that hill. So
Sure.
to me, it's not too. And again, I'm thinking about the outliers in terms of statistical,
Yeah.
but the one time it happens, it's going to be one time too many. So.
Yeah, and there could be some additional safety netting that could be put up down that line just for that very reason, potentially to look at. Yeah, I mean, part of the challenge was, we heard a lot from the Baseball Association about, the player warm-up areas and making sure we didn't impact those. And I do think it is a bit of a tight squeeze there, but we think the space offers a lot of opportunities just with the land resource that's there.
Yeah, I mean, we lost a playground when they built Braemar Field. There used to be a playground up on top of that hill. So I'm all for the playground. And I grew up playing baseball on these fields, so I knew when you were warming up, you got to keep your head on a swivel too. So there's a little bit of assumed risk when you're a baseball player and getting ready to play. So, but at the same time, I would hate for the young ones that are there probably watching their brothers and sisters play to, like I said, one time would be too many. So, kind of working my way around the park here. So then I was wondering, I really like the idea of some of the parking control for us that have kids that use the soccer fields, baseball fields, and the ice rink. I'm sure they are pretty excited about seeing that. And there's the turnaround area for the baseball field that's down on the, I guess, west side of there's a west side entrance kind of being southwest entrance, I guess. But what about the drop-off for Braemar Field, especially since it's pretty heavily used by a couple of athletic clubs, or a lot of the baseball, lacrosse, football, and soccer here once the winter flies? I didn't see if there was anything specific for a drop-off there. This
graphic doesn't really illustrate it very well, but there would be opportunities, I think, for that still to happen along this edge. We'd be advocating for that actually fence to be potentially removed. I'm not sure if that's a way to secure the complex, but just to have it more inviting and that whole lawn embankment inviting for people as they arrive at the parking lots to be able to get to that easier than what they can now would be something we were thinking about advocating for. But I think the drop-off mechanism would still hopefully serve Braemar Field here and then obviously over here for that second access.
Okay. I love the ski idea. I think that was one of the things that we heard loud and clear when we went through the exercise last year with the winter recreation area, that cross-country skiing. And I think that this is a workable, maybe a little bit of a compromise solution, but it does provide quite a bit of trail at 8 kilometers. I did see that there was something about grooming. So obviously, what are we thinking in terms of grooming equipment? What are we thinking about in terms of storage? What is that going to do to our budget as a park and recreation department going forward?
So my understanding is the city does not have equipment for setting classic tracks, just for rolling the trails. So there would have to be a investment made in a Titec or one of the tracking machines to pull. I guess that's probably more of an operations issue and how that's addressed. And the way our winters are going, there potentially are limited moments when a trail like this could be utilized by the public or the high school kids. So I think the notion of trying to keep it on the golf course seemed to make a lot of sense, but I know there's a lot of sensitivities about how that could happen and not cause any damage to the new course that's going to be opening. So.
Yeah, you kind of led me there too when you said the high schools. I don't know if we've talked. I know that when we went through, again, with the exercise with the winter recreation area, one of the big proponents of that was the high school team, since they were going to be displaced a little bit with some of the pathways that went in with the 9 Mile Creek, and being sensitive to them. Is this something that was looked at with them. I mean, there's rolling hills and stuff in the golf course, but I don't know if it provides the competition they're looking for. And or the flip side of that is with the usage of having a high school meet, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm assuming that that's a pretty significant number of skiers, and it's an aggressive form of recreation. So, we've got a great amenity that's now delayed but opening in 2019. And so do we have, is there some thought around that too?
I'd be happy to jump in on that one, Ken, if you don't mind. We did work very closely with the high school program throughout this entire process. I do think it's safe to say, however, that this is in no way a replacement for machine-made snow or the winter recreation program that we proposed last year.
Oh, and I'm more just talking about the fact that we're providing a trail. I'm not looking at the machine. It's just the actual.
Sure. From a use standpoint, they have stated that this is with adequate snow. It is an amenity that they could potentially use for training. It would never be a competition venue for them. And as you mentioned, Matt, it's not ideal. It doesn't provide the terrain that they would be looking for typically from a training perspective. But prior to our golf course construction on good snow years, they did use areas of this golf course for training, and we would certainly appreciate having them back again with the right snow conditions.
Okay. Two more. I know that there's a proposed pickleball, platform tennis. I know that we've got a couple of pickleball facilities in the community, and they're very popular. I guess my question is, I looked at, it's like $250,000 for the platform tennis. It's $25,000 for the pickleball. Yep. Have we done the due diligence to understand what is the actual numbers of community member? I mean, are we bursting at the seams and this is a necessary need, or is this a nice to have? And then the second piece of this is, I don't play pickleball. Maybe I will at some point in my lifetime, but by the time, if in 5 years, is pickleball like highline, just another kind of a fad sport that then we all of a sudden have, asphalt that's, we developed for a cost of $250,000, and then we have no one using it.
Yeah. I do think pickleball is here to stay. I know it's serving kind of the older senior community just based on the style of the game, and you have to do less running, and that's hard to say. Well, is that going to not be around in 5 years? I don't think that's the case. I think the platform tennis thing was really kind of a need that we looked at just to provide another winter use at the park. So with the fat tire mountain bikes in the winter, the cross-country skiers, is there something else we can offer? And I do sense the general public didn't grasp on or have a good understanding of what the whole platform tennis experience is providing. And because we had a lot of people thought that we were just proposing tennis courts, and we probably could have done a better job explaining exactly what platform tennis is.
Sure.
But there is definitely costs, with propane heaters to keep those, whether it's aluminum or wood decks, heated. I guess we didn't have a good sense of people clamoring in the community to want to play platform tennis. It's like here's a new type of recreational activity for the community to try out. But obviously, if you're going to invest that kind of money, you want to make sure there's people that want to go out and play tennis in the winter.
Sure.
That's the big challenge.
Yeah, I can speak to that just a bit as being a platform tennis player myself. It is more expensive for the courts, obviously, than pickleball. The seasonal aspect of it is key, as Ken said, as we're looking for ways to expand things that we can offer multi-seasons. It's winter. Pickleball obviously is not. And the other aspect of it is that there really are no public courts. So if you want to play paddle tennis, you've got to know somebody who's at a club or be a member of a club. We used to have some at Braemar many years ago. They disappeared. Most of the public courts eventually disappeared, but the sport's starting to make a bit of a comeback in the wintertime. So
sure,
just an alternative to think about.
Can I ask a question to that? In the way that the costs are broken out, so I've played paddleball myself, and I know in the summer those same courts are also used. So are the way that the line items are listed separately, is that one cost for one and another cost for another, or if there was could you use them of both? Would that be a different price?
Yeah, and I thought I'm just recalling from memory that we had.
They're separate line items, Corin. What do you?
It was an either
what are you
or.
thinking of there?
My question is one, I understand one item is for pickleball and one item is for
Platform tennis.
platform tennis. But if you were to make it so you could use it all year round, would the cost?
Can't.
The one at ECC, they use it during the summer too. So I wasn't sure if that's something that they could actually.
ECC.
Yeah, no, I might have confused it.
okay.
I don't. Pickleball and platform tennis are two different courts. And
Yep.
I'm just wondering, is this a niche? Are these both niche activities that, even golf for that matter, right? Golf's the high number of people playing golf was in 2001. We've seen the decline number of people playing golf, right? We see mountain biking, which is part of the biking community as a whole, has always seemed to be rising, which is why I think the mountain biking piece of this is a great solution. I just want to make sure that in the interest of what we trying to accomplish, is something that's season agnostic. There's always activities going on, and it's serving the greatest number of the residents and providing the most options. That's what I'm just asking, because this leads me into my last question or statement, which is, and I know everyone here knows what I'm going to say, but I'm still trying to understand and wrap my head around the idea that we have green space in this facility, and we're not giving it back to the youth of the various clubs and or even programming that could use a general field for programming, right? When I look at niche things, I want to make sure that we're providing those to our community and residents, absolutely. But I also know that the population is growing. Population growing means there's people moving in. It also means that there are children and youth growing up and wanting to have activities to do. So this is more of a general statement. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea that there was all of this stuff done and there was never any thought about adding another schedulable field green space that could have been used by many different of the field sports. So
I guess,
that's
Matt,
it.
that was kind of my point, was if we paid to have a platform tennis that was used when it's cold out, how could we use that same space for something else? So you could use it for some form of like youth tennis, or I believe the way the size is, you could actually do it for futsal, which is like an indoor soccer. So you could use it for something. Like futsal doesn't have walls. It's actually the same size courts.
Right.
So I'm just thinking, if we spend money on something that's only has a short season, how can we use that space the rest of the season? And that's really what I was trying to understand in terms of that. Not so much let's add an expense to it, but let's not build something that's only good for a short period of year, because we already have that in golf.
Yeah, those are all great points. The other big one is, which I think is the thing that we kept running into, is what are going to be activities that are compatible with the golf course. And so I think even the question was asked, is pickleball, is that even a compatible? You are somewhat close to the, is that the 17th hole? At least that fairway. So are you, obviously platform tennis in the winter would not impact that. But the whole notion of trying to make a platform tennis court more usable year-round, I would think there'd be some, or could be some exploration of that idea. The only thing that is similar between platform and pickleball are the court dimensions, which are the same. So.
All right. I agree with several of those comments. Thanks for bringing those up. A couple of points, maybe even to contradict what you were saying a little bit, though. There was some discussion. I think there's been quite a bit of discussion on a general use field here. And I think most people are coming down that it just doesn't fit at a golf course situation. It just doesn't fit with the parking. It doesn't fit with what other activities that are here. So we can continue to explore it because it's necessary for us to do that. But I think there's other alternatives to explore that better fit that. Two things to say on the pickleball and the platform tennis. I think there is more platform tennis demand. It's probably quiet because it doesn't exist, and it's a country club type of activity. It's private. Mm-hmm. If you made public courts, there'd be demand, and there'd be demand from outside of Edina as well. So I think that fits, and it always fits with a golf course. It always fits with this kind of a scenario, as opposed to pickleball. And pickleball, we need more pickleball courts. I think we should do them in a planned, kind of have an agenda and say, hey, let's take a look. And if we put in 5, are they being used? Let's put in another 5 and not overbuild them. There is a grain of Edina, and I think there's a demand for it. And we put some new ones in, and they're being used, well used by Lake Cornelia there. Maybe at Fred Richards, where there's a senior housing development, maybe, or something else that makes more sense. I don't think pickleball fits here either. I think platform tennis does. So those are my only comments.
And I guess piggybacking off that with the pickleball stuff too, I know that at one point, and maybe it's still, so correct me if I'm wrong, but we have pickleball striped at Garden Park. So we've got a lot of tennis courts that we have across all of the parks that we have, and if we're not seeing that they're at maximum capacity, is there a way that we can then schedule and make, stripe those for pickleball specific and post it and make sure? So I guess those are, to me, there's always alternative solutions to look at some of the stuff to make everyone have what they're looking for.
And at much lower cost with that, when we already have tennis courts and the same surface down. Yeah.
I've got a quick question about the improvements to the Courtney field. So with the improved grandstand, I know I've been to high school games over there, and the seating is, there's not very much seating. There's just kind of students and parents lined the foul lines by the fence standing up. And so I think the grandstand is a great idea, but there's just, it seems like there's not very much room between the fields, and especially with that building behind there. Would that go directly behind home plate in the field, or would it kind of looks like in the illustration that kind of connects with that building? How would that kind of work?
Yeah, so there is an overhang on that building, but I thought I heard the Baseball Association say that there would had to be some movement of home plate to accommodate that. I think that's how that would have to work. Yep. So it is kind of a one-sided grandstand in that illustration that behind home plate, but then down the left field line is primarily where the seating is, just because of the space restrictions down the right field line here. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And then going back to the budget, so I was looking at the permeable paving parking bays, and if you add it all together, that's $1.6 million, which is about 25% of the budget. I know that they're very good and effective for draining water, and that, but is there a cheaper way that's equally as effective that could end up saving 25%? That's just a lot of the budget, and it's for parking. I know it's aesthetically pleasing and stuff, but it just seems like a lot. Yeah.
Well, just from a stormwater perspective, permeable paving is a good way to be better stewards of stormwater runoff. But your comment is a good one about the expense associated with permeable paving. It's gotten a lot more affordable than it has been in years past. But I think trying to leverage what the watershed, that would be, there's a certain threshold for a storm event. It's either over an inch or inch and a half or something that they participate in funding. So I think the watershed district would be one of the ways we're trying to advocate for them to participate in some of the funding, so it wouldn't be such a huge expense on behalf of the city. But I agree that some of the big dollar items here and all the cost estimates have to do with the permeable paving. And I think there are scenarios here where you could do permeable paving just in certain areas and not all. And we're just kind of throwing the whole kitchen sink here in the initial estimate.
So if I could, just to build off of that, because I think that's an excellent point. And the 6.5 million and then the additional 1.6, so $8.1 million. Obviously not a cheap estimate, but I know this is the first time we've seen it, so I know for your team you've just been pulling it together as well. But certainly don't want to leave the opinion that any of us think this is a bargain, right?
Yeah.
Are there other kitchen sink items on here that we ought to be aware of, that if we think about, we don't really need to do this, we could do this instead? That would be significant, right? Not nitpicky.
Yeah, I do think the Braemar Boulevard Hillary Lane conversion, as we talked about, is there are so many probably variations of that outside of a full rebuild to consider. And the only way I think to really evaluate it in a accurate way would be to do additional design study to say what can we do. So if there's anywhere where I think there's more of potential way to scale down the investment, that whole, how can we accommodate a safer separated trail from the street? There's probably more cost-efficient ways to do that.
And just one final question. There's a kind of a big part of the plan is about the cross-country skiing, but it doesn't show up anywhere, like in budgets, in the financials. I'm just wondering, is it considered just hey, we got the land, if it snows, great, or is it actually part of a bigger plan?
I would say it's kind of a combination of that. It certainly would be winter recreation in general would be a very significant programmatic goal for us, but it is also very dependent on the weather. We do have some trails drawn in here to the best of our ability at this point. As we've talked about throughout this entire process, it's going to be incredibly important to us that we don't do damage to the golf course once the golf course is finished. It's amazing how just a set of ski tracks that get used a few times across a fairway, or heaven forbid across a green, can really do some damage. So our intention is, once the golf course is done, we've seen it grown in, we have a better feel for the layout of the land, we would formalize some trails. And then really the only other investment besides staff time to groom trails would be probably a more significant piece of equipment so that we could actually set tracks. Right now we just have a groomer that we pull behind a piece of equipment, and it just grooms a flat trail, a flat multi-use trail. So we would like to eventually create a trail with set tracks.
So if we took, hate to see Ken's work all go, to the side, but this whole thing gets set aside, would we still be doing cross-country skiing?
Absolutely. Yep. We have for the last several years, and as soon as the golf course is grown in and we feel that we can accommodate that traffic, we will start doing that no matter what gets incorporated as part of this plan.
Okay. Thanks.
Devil's advocate, sorry. What happens if we continue to have winters like we are and we aren't looking at snowmaking? And I think the impetus for this overall master plan was the outcome of our discussions with the city council and the residents around the previously proposed winter use of this area. And I think we've solved for mountain biking, both for all seasons, and I think we've solved for walking recreation or running recreation. But I think there seemed to be a large ski community that if we continue with those two things, one, we don't have the snow, and two, we have this very expensive new amenity that we want to be very cautious about how we use in terms of what happens in the spring when the grass comes up. I guess this all gets set aside, but we still need cross-country skiing. What's our backup plan?
I would say from the city perspective, we don't have a backup plan. As we went through the process last year, it was determined that machine-made snow would not be part of this process. So until we receive any direction or significant interest by the Parks and Recreation Commission and the City Council to direct us to consider machine-made snow someplace, we don't have a backup other than our adjoining communities.
Okay, I think we had some really great discussion on this topic and some fantastic ideas to feed back into the planning, but any other comments that anyone has? So this item is one that we do need to review and recommend to the City Council. And I think it's important for everybody to remember this is a plan. And so as we would go into each component of it, there would be a lot more work that would be done. So just keep that in mind. These are all really great ideas, but some of those would be built into the next phase of the process. So do we need to have a motion then, Anne? Okay. So if I could have a motion to approve the plan. And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
But, excuse me, if
Yes.
I could, before we just jump to a vote, we've got $8.1 million in the plan.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some folks that have talked about, is there an opportunity to phase some of this plan? Is that something, Ann, that it would make sense for us to include in a recommendation? So, as I've been working on the comp plan, one of the things that comes up is environmental, sustainability, invasive species, trails. And we've got 3 items on here that also tend to be the lowest cost items. Does it make sense for us to recommend a phased approach as opposed to just dump a $8.1 million plan in front of the city council?
I think that's a good question. My assumption was it would be phased depending on, this wouldn't be a plan that they would just enact.
Right. And so I guess I'm asking is, do we feel that we should be providing some of that direction, or should we just leave it up to the city council to either kick back to us or decide on their own?
Are we at the point where we're actually determining the priorities of the project, or is it more the overall plan right now as far as coming up with the different opportunities that could happen at the site?
Yeah, that's a great question. I certainly see both sides. Determining phasing would be a significant effort, I feel, at this point. It's not as easy as you all discussed earlier this evening. It's not as easy just to say, okay, we'll do the trails, mountain biking and walking trails, because there are so many other impacts. There are grant applications that we would want to do. There's permitting. So yes, I think a phased approach is a very reasonable approach. I guess you all can make whatever recommendation that you feel is most appropriate. I think it might make sense at this stage of the game, however, to see the city council's reaction and ask, have them provide the direction for staff or the Parks and Recreation Commission to provide a phasing plan. But you could certainly include it as part of your recommendation that you feel that it would be a good approach as well.
So would you then, Ann, be able to build that in? Would you feel comfortable building that into your presentation as you bring this to the city council, that was something that we'd at least like some feedback from them on?
I could certainly include that as you mean just the fact that you would like to do a phasing plan, not have me do a phasing plan.
Or at least the topic came up when we'd like their insight on. Is that something
Sure.
you'd like us to put some more time and attention into?
Sure, absolutely.
Or
I'd be happy.
Is it not worthwhile at this point?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that if that would be the board's recommendation.
Actually, I really, one of the things I liked about the way you guys put this plan together is that you do have it in kind of in chunks, for lack of a better term, with costs associated with it. So you can kind of pick off the menu of what you think we might be able to handle in any budget year. So, I mean, I really appreciated when I got to the end here when you had the costs laid out like this. It was very helpful. So it lends itself to me. I think the thinking of the master plan was such that it's not all or nothing. It is parts. So I think, Greg, to your point, that if you go to the council and you're talking about it, and you say, we either recommended it or didn't recommend it. We haven't voted, but it's laid out such that we can do phasing. I think the thought of it at the beginning is that we can implement parts, and it doesn't all have to be at once. And so if City Council, you guys approve it, and you want the Parks and Rec group to look at what should be done or prioritize, that's great.
And if I may add just one more thing too, all of a sudden as we're talking about this, I realize that there is another whole work plan that you all probably don't have a lot of familiarity with. And the name of that work plan is now the budget work plan. For a while it was the Vision Edina work plan, and it was the City Council work plan. It's the same work plan, but it has changed names a few times. And the budget work plan is a work plan that city administration and the executive leadership team works on specifically with the city council on initiatives that the city council would like to see for the city and for staff to work on. And then we specifically tie it to the budget that the city council approves. So we're not just coming up with ideas that don't have potential funding sources either for the planning or for the implementation phase. So this is the budget work plan, and I just wanted to mention that in the budget work plan for next year, I believe by the end of the second quarter, we are going to be asked to identify funding sources for the Fred Richards Park Master Plan, the Arden Park Master Plan, for the Braemar Park Master Plan, and then we still have to do the Weber Woods Master Plan and talk about a potential funding source for that too. So those are conversations that will be happening very early next year within the city staff, along with the city council too. So not that that answers your or solves your problem here, but I just wanted to make you aware that these conversations will be happening early in 2018.
And I'm sorry, I just have a question about the recommendation piece of this, and I probably should have asked this a long time ago, but so we're looking at this is what's going to be presented to City Council. We as a collective group will say yay or nay on the recommendation. Is what City Council is seeing here, they can either say that's what they want to do, or they can remove it, or are there other considerations, such as an alternative sport for pickleball, or we want to do wider bike trails, or we want to do double wide, what do you call it, boardwalk for biking specific and walking specific? I mean, is the City Council going to have that ability to do that, or is this kind of just, here's what we have, there's very little deviation. Either we're not going to do some of this stuff, we're going to phase it. I guess maybe that's more of a park department's question, but I'm just trying to understand a little bit about what the recommendation entails.
Sure. You know, the city council certainly has the authority to do whatever they want to do as far as this plan goes. They could say, you know, as Brenda said, they could say, this is a plan. We want you to continue to explore parts A, B, and C of the plan, or we don't like the pickleball, we'd like you to explore platform tennis. They could get into that level of detail. And honestly, I've seen it happen both ways at different projects at different times. But there is always the opportunity for them to say different parts that they like and want us to explore, different parts that they don't like and don't want us to explore. Or they can give us the task to explore something further as we get into the design phase and report back for more information or for clarification or for elimination. So several different options, and honestly, I'm not sure how the council is going to respond to the overall plan.
What might be helpful is, can you give us an idea as to what part will we play after we take a vote on this down the road? Will this come back to us one more time to get some more feedback or not?
I can't say exactly when, but I can tell you that if the city council approves the plan and they want us to move forward, I see this as a situation very similar to Arden Park, where the city council approved the plan, they gave us the direction to move forward, so then we enter into the design phase. And I would expect the Parks and Rec Commission to be very involved in a next design phase for this park.
And can I ask an obvious question? In terms of funding, I'm assuming that we don't have this number in our budget. So in terms of, there could be money that we could get from, as you mentioned, the watershed district and different folks, but I'm not sure that anybody's handing out this much in their generosity. So in terms of this, I think that's part of the other question with the city council is, what is our, what does good look like here? You know, I mean, and what is achievable? And are we looking to ask the public for funding, or how does that look? Because I think that also helps us understand how much do we need to prioritize down, and in terms of making sure we're putting a lot of effort towards something that's really going to happen.
Absolutely. Those are all great comments and great questions. I don't have an answer for you for any of them right now. Sometimes when we go into a master planning phase, we will have a specific budget, and we'll say we're not going to exceed $5 million, say, on this project. That is not how we approached this plan. We approached this plan as, let's look at this entire 500-acre park and figure out what we can do here. So we really did approach it without any predetermined dollar amounts. We didn't give Ken any restrictions as to what he could do or couldn't do. So those are the conversations that I think will be really great to have with the city council as we move forward in the next couple of months. And then in the next couple of months after that, as we start to look at priorities and potential funding sources. So all great questions. I'm sorry, I just don't have an answer for you.
So for me, I look at this as what's the potential at Braemar, not necessarily that we're going to do exactly what's in this plan. I think that's how we approached it, because we didn't really have a cohesive park, and it was, how can we make this cohesive? And this, I think, touches on the key areas that I was interested in seeing, and now we need to get some feedback. But if you think that so I felt like we're at a little bit more high level plan than maybe some of the other ones that we've done. It was more about potential, and do we agree that these are items that would, that we like, and we think it, drives the connectivity, which I think is really important, and usage at the park, not necessarily about the budget, because I think if we went into and said, okay, on this parkway conversion, we love that idea, but we can't spend $3 million. Then we would dive in and say, okay, good, they like that idea. What can we do, and what are the options around that?
Absolutely. I guess I wasn't trying to say, like, why are we out looking, period. I just want to make sure I understand that. So if where we are at, so when people are going to ask the question of anytime we post anything, they assume that we already somehow have the money, or this is somehow plan is already set. So I just want to get that out there to understand, okay, which are we? Are we at a, hey, we know what the budget is, or this is a great, for lack of a better word, laundry list of great ideas of where we want to go, just so we understand that, because I think that anytime we publish things, people make the assumptions that it's farther along than we are, and I just want to make sure that we're all able to answer that.
Yeah, I look at this and I think that's where we're at is this is a general planning at a 30, 40,000 level. Did we miss anything? We've talked about diversity of use, full season use, bringing all the entire community together, having a chance. This is probably the only chance for mountain biking with this terrain. So are we missing anything? Is there anything here that we really dislike? That kind of thing. That's kind of the discussion I think we're supposed to be having right now, as I understand it. Excellent point on that. Hey, there's some huge costs here. Is that really of value to us? Do we want to take a look at that? It's important to beautify things, but maybe we can. It doesn't have to be the whole space. It can be trailers around the edge or some kind of design that would really suffice and cut the cost in half. So I love the our students are thinking over there. So excellent choice or excellent point on that. But I think that's where we're at, right? So. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I was viewing it, and maybe what we need to do is make sure that that's what the city council. They know that that's how we're looking at it at that 30,000 feet, that we feel like we've covered the components that we think are important at the park, but more detail to that and what the cost would really be. We're not necessarily proposing that this is exactly what we would want to spend, right? Okay. Did you?
Yep, I move to approve the Braemar Park Master Plan.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. So it passes to move on to the city council. Thank you, Ken.
Yep, thank
That
you.
was a very nice overview, very nice job on
Great,
the
thank you.
plan. So our next item is related to our 2018 work plan. And I know Ann has a few things to share as it's gone to the city council now for approval.
Yes, thank you very much, Brenda. Just a couple of things before we walk through the approved City Council work plan. As you know, this is a process that we started working on probably early summer. We finalized it, I believe, in September. It was presented to the City Council by commission chairs on October 3rd in a joint work session. After that, the city manager reviews all of the work plans, takes all of the information that he knows about from city staff work plans and from the rest of the board and commission work plans and all of the different initiatives and projects that are going on in the city, and tries to prioritize. Also tries to look at the great volunteer work that all of our volunteers are doing, all of the different events and different projects that we're working on in the city, and tries to look at the overall big picture. With that, our city manager makes some recommendations to the city council for the individual work plans, and then after that, the city council again discusses each individual work plan, finalizes it, and then approves the work plan. So the city council approved all of the commission work plans on December 5th. One thing that I was mentioning to Brenda and Greg a little bit earlier today is, as we're looking at all of the work plans that we have in the city and all of the different projects and initiatives that we have going on and all of the different community engagement processes, we put all of those different processes on a calendar this year, and it was really pretty overwhelming. There was hardly a day in the month that there wasn't some sort of a community engagement initiative that was going on for some department, for some project in the city. So this is a little bit of an attempt to try to rein in everything that we have going on too, and to control the amount of processes that are going on in the city at the same time. So with that, just a little bit of background, I'll pass it back to Brenda.
Good. Thanks, Ann. So I thought we'd just look at what the initiatives are and then make sure that people can look at those and make sure that we do want to have somebody on each of the different initiatives. And then, of course, the student members, you can take a look now and see what you'd like to work on and let us know. Okay, so the Arden Park Natural Resource Plan has moved ahead, so that's good. And then we did get approval to look at recommending a Weber Woods master plan. I think that's great to get some use out of that area. The next item is the field capacity. So that's Greg and Eileen had shown interest in working on that. And then we have our comprehensive plan, which, as we know, is a little bit more work than we initially thought it might be. So we've got that we've got to get done. And they added a new item, which we will need some resources to work on this, related to an initiative to review and look at the John Philip Sousa Band to find kind of a formal relationship or memorandum on how they should be operating. So,
can you explain what that is? I'm maybe not familiar with.
I'm actually going to have Ann tell us a little bit more about that one.
I'm happy to jump in on that one. So we have a community band, the John Philip Sousa Community Band, that we have had a relationship with for decades. It's a great organization, but the relationship has never really been formalized. It goes back several city managers with a lot of handshake agreements, and it goes to everything from use of city facilities for practice to who pays for equipment and music, who pays for gas to transport the band to off-site concerts, to does the city provide a vehicle, does the city provide insurance, all of those sorts of things. So we have been operating without any sort of a formal agreement with the John Philip Sousa Band, and the city is interested in formalizing, even in the form of possibly a memorandum of understanding between the city and the band.
And maybe what is the nexus with the parks?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is something that has always fallen in our department. And I would say probably primarily because they perform at both of our parks, Centennial Lakes and Edinburgh. We are their home venues, Edinburgh during the winter months and Centennial Lakes during the summer months. And we also provide practice and storage space for them at the Centennial Lakes Maintenance Building. So it has always been something that has kind of fallen under the purview of the Parks and Recreation Department. But again, it's been a little gray.
Can you also state, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say if I could add to that, because I had the same question. So I looked up the John Philip Sousa Band website, and stated that in 1973 it was formed with a relationship sponsored by the Edina Park and Rec Department. So since 1973, there has been a relationship with the Park and Rec Department. Now, I don't know if we have a line item in our budget at all that accounts for monies that they might need, but I was saying to Ann before the meeting, we're about to enter our 45th year.
So then to that point, is there a reciprocal benefit to the parks? I mean, so we give them storage space and rent or locations to practice and to play, but do we, I'm not trying to be rude, are we trying, or do the people pay, do they give us anything? I mean.
They do provide free performances at the parks year-round. So that is a fairly significant and sizable benefit for the city. Sure. But other than that, no. They do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4th of July. Yep.
Thanks.
Now, one item I think we do need a little clarification on is that the Arts and Culture Commission is also noted here as supporting the initiative with a review and comment on relationships. So we can get a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look into that a little bit further as well. But my understanding as I read this is that the Parks and Rec Commission would make a recommendation and the Arts and Culture Commission would provide review and comment on your recommendation.
Okay, so what I'd like is if people could look at this and see if they would like to be part of this initiative and let us know at the next meeting. We need probably 2 people to work on this particular item.
Sorry, I had a quick question. I noticed a couple of these we're moving forward with, but they say funds are not available. Does that just mean that there's no funds to do any investment in, say, I'm looking at Weber Woods specifically, but there's no funds at this time to do any construction? We still want to do the work, have the plan ready to go, those type of things, but there's no funding at least at this point in 2018 to do any sort of construction or anything for Weber Woods. Or, I mean, for Braemar Park, we initiated a relationship with a consultancy, and do we not have funds to do that for Weber Woods in 2018?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I can see why that's a little bit confusing. So for initiative number 2 for Weber Woods, we do have a funding source identified for the planning process, but we don't have funds identified for construction. So that box probably could have been checked either way. For the initiative, for the John Philip Sousa initiative, there won't be any funding source needed at all. But yeah, it's a great question.
Okay, good. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so then there's a couple items that are put on our parking list. The first item is one that was put on the parking list from the prior year work plan, our 2017. And then the second one is the funding options. It looks like that they felt that we shouldn't be focusing on that, so that's a bit disappointing, I think, because we had a lot of thoughts on that.
$8 million project.
Yeah. Right. And then there is one item that kind of fell off, so it looks like something that they don't want us working on, and that's the marketing initiative and communication. And so I think from talking with Ann, they're looking at that more from a staff perspective and how to improve that. And I can tell you that was brought up in other commissions as well, so maybe there's overlap there that they're trying to address more from a staff level.
We do have a couple of things that we're working on internally with staff right now, and hopefully by next month I'll have more that I'll be able to report back to you with.
Okay, good. Thanks, Ann. Okay.
Sorry, one suggestion, Brenda, if I'm just reacting to what I thought I heard you say. Can we get to the point tonight where we can add names to this, or do you want us to come back and revisit this next month? Because we have a pretty good quorum here tonight as far as
if somebody
members.
if somebody knows what they'd like to work on, and we have some people who want to sign up for this additional item that was added.
And I'm also advertising for help on our initiative number 3. Eileen and I are taking additional members to help us with the study and report on the field, courts, and ice sheets.
I'll volunteer for that.
Perfect. I was hoping you would, yep. What's that? So Val and Corn will add it to that one.
Okay, well, let's go through each and see if somebody else wants to sign up for the Arden Park.
I think I had volunteered to help on number 3 a couple meetings ago with since I was the one that wanted to have ice sheets added.
I'll second
Okay.
that.
We'll use it. We'll use it all.
So anybody else like to help Julie and Eileen on the Arden Park?
I would if it's still available.
You would like to do?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, you want to switch to that?
I can do that instead.
Okay, great. Thanks, Corin. And then we have the Weber Woods. Is there anyone else we already have quite a few members on that. Anyone who wanted to change or not be part of that, or anyone who would like to be added to that?
I had a question about it. So do we have ownership of the land at Weber Woods? And I should probably know this, being that I'm on this work plan item, but do we own that property in partnership with St. Louis Park? And what will they have, if that's true? What did they have in terms of say or planning of this area?
We own approximately 2/3 of the property, and St. Louis Park owns 1/3 of the property. We own the parts of the property that are in our respective communities. And the intention with this plan is to work and plan the park in conjunction with the city of St. Louis Park. So it would be a dual project. We have delayed the project a little bit already, waiting for the city of St. Louis Park to be ready, and that's what we're working on right now, is the timing, and we're starting to talk a little bit about potentially a memorandum of understanding that would really clearly state what each city is going to be responsible for and how this whole process is going to work out.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, then we've already gone through this item on the field.
Yep.
So I think we're good there. And then comprehensive plan, I think we're covered on that one because we're working on that now. And then we have the last one, which is the work with the John Phillips Sousa Band. Anybody willing to sign up for that one?
Can I ask?
Sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask a question about timing. These almost all say that they are going to be completed, or target completion date is December 2018. And for folks who signed up for multiple other projects, do we have a sense when these will be busier? Like, so that people can make sure that they're making a realistic commitment?
Yep.
Sure. The Arden Park is going to be busy all year. Weber Woods, as I mentioned, we're still waiting to hear from the city of St. Louis Park as to when they're going to be ready, and unfortunately I don't have an answer yet, but I'm hoping within the next month we'll have an answer on that. The field study, Susan, do you know when you were thinking about maybe starting that one?
I haven't really discussed it, but it can be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, that one certainly could be flexible. Just based on the big thing for us is going to be working on staff time for Tiffany. So just to avoid her prime season, but we can be flexible on that. Comprehensive plan, first quarter of the year.
First quarter, right?
Yep.
I mean,
After-
December is really when the city has to be done with it, right? But
Yep.
our goal
Exactly.
is March.
Yes. And then the John Phillips Sousa could be any time this year.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so back to who would like to sign up for that last initiative?
I would definitely be willing to be a part of that. My math teacher is actually a member of that band.
Perfect.
And also I'm an employee at Edinburgh, and concessions is always closed by the time the concerts are. So is there any conflict of interest there? Be working on that.
Great.
Would that be
good.
okay for me to be on that?
No conflict of interest, but sounds like you have some good insights. I think that's
Sure,
going to
yeah,
be
I think
great.
that'd be a good one. I think that'd be a good one for me to work on.
Great.
And Courtney, you better put my name down because I think I'm out of projects.
Oh, okay, great. So then we have Michael.
Project killer.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else like to help them with that project? Well, why don't you come back to us and let us know if you need more resources? Does that sound good? Okay.
Who else? Come on, who plays instruments here? Should be stepping up.
Okay, good, thank you. So the next item is the comprehensive plan, and Greg is chairing that subcommittee, and so I'll turn it over to you, Greg, for an update.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. You have, I believe each of you have a handout in front of you that I'll go through, a very colorful draft framework. But I want to give you a little background again, just to set the stage for where we are in the 2018 comp plan update. This is our long-term planning guidance, right? So this becomes a document that, admittedly, I have to say, the 3 years I've been here, I have not referenced the 2008 comp plan. And we've heard rumblings through this process that maybe that wasn't the most well-respected comp plan that Edina's ever done, and maybe that's why we haven't seen it. I don't know. But our hope is that we create a document that becomes a good guiding long-term plan for the next 10 years. It is updated every 10 years, so we are replacing that 2008 comp plan with our work. Our commission works on the recommendation. As we were just saying, we need to wrap that up as of March of next year. We then hand that off to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission pulls all this together and hands it off to the City Council, and the City Council approves it and then passes it along to the Met Council for their approval. So it has a few layers of review and approval. As I noted also, while we finishing up March 2018, the city's deadline, I believe, is the end of next calendar year. So what are we working with? We have a 2008 comp plan that had about 14 different parts. It had a very lengthy introductory section. It had 12 different sections of specific policies and goals that the comp plan was dealing with. In fact, just to give you a sense, I won't go into the detail, but the 12 sections in our 2008 comp plan were parkland and open spaces, natural resources conservation and management, wildlife management plan. Don't think we've discussed wildlife management here in the last couple years. That was one of our sections. Walking and biking trails pathway plan, park maintenance and aging infrastructure renovation and replacement plan, athletic fields and facilities plan, collaboration and partnerships plan, use of volunteers plan, indoor fitness and exercise facilities plan, outdoor hockey and general skating rink plan, recreation programs and services plan, enterprise facilities plan. So 12 different sections that they'd gone through and created policies and goals for. And then an implementation plan after that. My recommendation working with the team in this first draft is that we can reduce that to about 8 parts with really just 5 core pieces, right? So still have a reduced, more concise intro that will be built off of the strategic plan that we finished 2 years ago. So we're not having to create new content, but using that. 5 sections that I'll go through in a moment that will be aligned with the key areas of development from our strategic plan. Perhaps an executive summary, and perhaps an implementation plan. And so those would be the 8 sections that we're kind of moving towards in a new 2018 comprehensive plan. So what I wanted to do at this point is just to give you a sense of what this draft framework looks like. From the commission here, Corin, Eileen, and Brenda and I have been leading that effort, and will continue to do so with a relatively heavy work responsibility over the next 90 days or so. But I hope that what we have here will prompt each of you to at least take a look at this. If you have insights, there is absolutely nothing preventing you from passing those along to us so we can get those into the plan as well, right? This is not 4 of us with staff who are creating this on our own, but really want to reach out and continue to encourage everybody to bring some insight to the table. We will also be working with a consultant. I don't remember the name of the consultant, Ann, but I know the Planning Commission has got a consultant that we've asked to engage with here in the month of December. So we'll have a few iterations over the next 90 days where we will take this framework, add some content to it, get the consultant's insight, bring it back to the board for commission for some review, and probably do 2 more iterations over the next 60 days before we get to a 2018 comp plan that we're ready to bring back to our full review and recommendation. Okay? before I kind of dig into this. Any questions on kind of the process and where we stand on that at the moment? All right, very quickly, because this is just a high-level framework, I just wanted to go through the document that I've had passed out to you, and I can certainly give this to any of you, or Janet can electronically. So again, general summary, part A, general summary. Content will be provided by the consultants, but as we've said, we're going to direct them to our strategic plan, say we think it's all there, here's exactly where we think you can pull it from. The prior work had a lot of detail around the city itself, energy usage, efficiencies, a lot of park details. We're going to try to make this a little bit certainly more concise. Potentially part B, an executive summary of what the recommendation through the comp plan is. My part C here is just some notes for the team and for staff to follow up on some things that might be changing. One thing that we do still need to get a little bit more direction as I looked at the 2008 comp plan is some confusion around, are we creating policies, are we creating goals, what's the difference between the two? And I think we'll continue to get some input from the Planning Commission and the consultants to exactly what statements we're trying to make in the comprehensive plan. Part D will drop out. That's just noting the 5 key areas of development. So as we go into the 5 key areas of development, the other thing I've done is I've taken those initial 12 sections and I've mapped each of those to the 5 key areas of development that we have. So hopefully nothing drops out completely, but I don't think we need those 12 levels that they had in 2008. So again, building off of our strategic plan, our 5 sections, at least my starting framework recommendation would be, number 1, natural resources and sustainable parks. And just to give you a summary of how this works, the first point is to say, again, we'll pull a summary from the 2016 strategic plan. And within this section, we'll also ask for consideration of points about the environment and sustainability. So if there are goals that we believe we should have around that area or those 2 areas, that will show up here under natural resources and sustainable parks. The red section that I've included next are applicable goals that came from the 2008 comprehensive plan that I've mapped to this section, and then attempted to identify, again, a very first high-level cut. Those highlighted in green, we probably will try to keep, maybe even as they stood in 2008. Those that are yellow, we'll probably keep and modify them to some degree, and those that are just left in red may drop out completely. And then the C section in this that is all in green, those are some new goals that are either coming out of our 2016 strategic plan or other inputs that I've collected from some of you that have already provided them, or for some of the discussions that we've had already. So high-level structure, that's the way this is set up. First one, natural resources and sustainable parks. Second section will then be parks, open spaces, and trails. Third section is recreation facilities. Fourth is recreation programs. And fifth is finance and management. And as I've said, underneath finance and management, this section also to include marketing and funding considerations. Otherwise, I think all the others are relatively self-explanatory.
Greg, can I interrupt you really quickly?
Yep. Go ahead.
I think it would be important to at least ask City Council in terms of that last point in terms of marketing. And since the 2 of the topics that we had on our initiatives, they put us as a parking lot. So if they don't want us to be doing funding and marketing, I want to make sure that we don't include it here, because I think that was our goal, was to try to keep to our strategic initiatives, and doing the marketing and funding and how that was going to look was why we put that on the initiatives in the first place. But by them pushing back and putting that as a parking lot, I wonder if that's not what they want us to be working on. So that would be the only thing I'd like to ask your staff or the City Council of, should that be in there or not when we have them parking lot ideas that we had.
No, I think that's good insight. My initial reaction, Corin, on that would be that one pushback, at least as I read it, was from the marketing perspective, is I think City Council said that's kind of a staff responsibility, so we don't need to be using up commission time for that, and realize what we're providing here in the comprehensive plan is everything. So it would drive what staff is doing as well as what we're working on as a commission. Funding, though, could be an interesting one, right? I would still argue that because we as a commission felt that funding was critical, especially as we continue to bring in, more master plans that need more funding, that we think about if we would want to put something in here. City Council always can strike it out. Planning Commission can probably strike it out. But certainly worthwhile if we want to get some more clarity on that. But I guess my bias would be I'd rather see us build it in and have somebody tell us, no, you don't need to worry about that. At least we're kind of banging the gong a little bit to say, well, it's important somewhere, right? Yeah. Other questions on that high level? Otherwise, I just want to call out a couple other things, and then I won't spend much more time here, but happy to take inputs and answer questions. Back on section E under natural resources and sustainable parks, I mentioned that the previous comp plan had a whole section on wildlife. And so here I just left us an open question for us to help address as a small working group, but also as a commission and a department. How should we address wildlife management issues? Right, as I said, it is not a topic that's come up in the 3 years that I've been here. It was in our previous comp plan. And so we should probably think about, is that something that we should have in the 2018 plan? Again, no need to answer that tonight, but something over the next 90 days I think we need to consider if we should build that in, and if so, how.
Greg, just one question on that. Yep. What is defined as hazardous? Is it an overpopulation of deer? Because then that was, or is that the coyotes that people are seeing in their...
Is it the wild turkeys and the coyotes and, you say in the 2008 comp plan you were going to have a plan for that. It's not defined. It's just listed as hazardous. So, again, if we thought that was something that we should be taking up, we would have to, I think, define that a little bit better. Again, that's just from my reading in the comp plan. It didn't seem to be defined anymore. What else to call? Parks, open spaces, and trails in F. One of the items that came up again and again and again and again in the 2008 plan, in every policy in almost every section, was we shall not sell parkland, right? We shall not sell parkland. We shall not sell parkland. It really left no opening to do anything but. So I've suggested maybe a little bit different wording on point number 7 in green. And again, this is just a first draft for consideration for those of us on the working group and others to kick around. And the wording that I've come up with is to say it is the preference of the city to maintain and, when feasible, increase its current park and open space property. Situations may arise where the sale, swap, or disposal of such property is deemed in the best interest of the city. Any such opportunities will be treated on a case-by-case basis. Again, I looked at that to say I'm not sure that changes how we may address anything, but at least allows an opening for us to have a discussion and a consideration, when before, even when we had, I remember a resident came in here and said, gee, I need a corner of my parcel and I want to do, and we said, no, we're really not interested in doing that. Kick it back to the Planning Commission, right? So again, just a point that I think is, it was very strongly stated in the 2008 comp plan that I would suggest we might look at.
Is there an opportunity here in that? I totally agree with that statement. I think it's great, but to make it a little bit more concise, to say, I don't know what the number is, let's just for sake of numbers, to say that 35% of our current city acreage is parkland, that will maintain that level, because I think whatever that number may be, can we define what the minimum is? Because I think what you might find is that you might find people that go through this and find out that they're thinking about selling that Fred Richards, and they're going to let it be condos, and that's where they're going to put the 40-foot high rise with the, all that type of stuff. So I just want to make sure that we're delineating the fact that this is about maintaining a minimum, but there might be some swappage and things that happen. So
there is a great point, and there is a point from 2008. That's the first point under parks, open spaces, and trails that I've recommended we keep and potentially modify. To your point, Matt, that says devote a minimum of 15% of Edina's land area to parkland and open space. So that's there. That's probably a good metric of some kind for us to keep as a threshold. We might just want to review whether that's still the right number or not. Okay, good point. What else did I want to call out? Oh, just as well, because Ann and staff hasn't had a chance to see this either, and it might influence them, and it just was a little mind idea as I had. I went through here. I have this in two spots. Under recreation facilities, new goals, the green section C.2. I have something that starts off by saying, to ensure transparency, accountability, and sustainability of Edina assets, enterprise facilities will conduct regular long-term and annual business plan reviews. Now, something of that nature may indeed already be happening today, but I thought it might be worthwhile for us from an accountability perspective to call it out more specifically within a comp plan that says, here's the expectation. And I said the detail of that can be found in the finance and management section. And so within that, I did build it out more to say under C.3, again, to ensure transparency, accountability, and sustainability of Edina assets, enterprise facilities will renew long-term business plans every third year for presentation to the park and approval by the Edina City Council. Annual reviews of performance against plan will be conducted by the staff and a small park working group, appropriate with the end of each enterprise facility season. And again, I don't have any insight in working with Ann and staff yet what's already being done, but I felt this was something from my own perspective on accountability and transparency that would be worthwhile for us to consider stating in kind of a comp plan. So again, open for input and insight from others, but I did want to call those 2 points out because they are relatively specific and something that's new. And to Corin's point, I did put in there as well under finance and management C.1, explore alternative funding to accomplish department goals and objectives, our mission, be open to considering novel and unique ideas and opportunities. Now, I think most of this still needs some work once we kind of decide, are we writing policy or are we writing goals? But I at least wanted to get some ideas down from all the inputs I've had from a number of you, as well as looking at the 2008 plan and give you a sense of a framework of where we are and the likely depth and breadth of what this document might be. That's all I've got at this point, I think. Well, I should say next steps. So review and amend the draft. And again, as I said, open to inputs. You can probably, Ann, what's best? Send them to you and Janet as opposed to us as a working group. How's the best way to flow that?
I think to send things through Janet would be great.
That way we make sure we kind of keep and maintain a copy.
Exactly.
Okay. We don't have a date yet for a consultant, but I would say if take as a framework that as a working group, we want to turn this document 2 more times in the next 90 days. So if you can give us any amended ideas or insights over the next, call it 3 weeks with the holidays, that would be very useful. Because then we'll try to turn this again after some consultant input in January, and then again with a more final copy in February. One thing that we do need to follow up on is we do have a responsibility or a request from the Planning Commission to make sure that we're connecting and linking across other commissions. And I know we did some of that early on, but that's probably something as a commission we should revisit around who wants to connect with other commissions. I know we did that up front when we agreed to read old parts of the 2008 comp plan, but I think we're dealing with a different set of commissions today than what the sections were in 2008. So, Ann, I could probably use some help. Our working group could use some help on aligning commission members with other parts that are being developed so that we make sure that we have some linkage there. Okay? Then we'll update the draft and share it with the Park Commission in Jan. Again, and then revise those inputs and prepare a recommendation document for our review in February so that we can get back to a fully revised document that I expect will need a motion for approval in March that we'll then present to the Planning Commission. Okay? That's all I had.
Good. Greg, great work on this. Thank you so much for walking everybody through that.
Well, thank you to everyone that's provided inputs. That's what has helped.
It's aggressive timeline, but we'll make it. So next item is correspondence and petitions. So I don't know if anyone has comments on that, what was included. Okay. And then we'll move on to chair and member comments. The one comment I wanted to make is I have noticed all the signs have gone up now at the parks, and they look very nice. And I'm sure you'll give us more of an update on that. I heard Ken talk about that as well, but at least all the parks around my neighborhood have new signs and very easy to read, and yeah, they look beautiful.
I had a question on those. I noticed that some of them don't have an address on them yet, and maybe they're not done. So you can tell me to buzz off. And the other question I have is that where do we come in with budget? Because I noticed that there were some signs for some amenities that maybe I missed it in the original proposal, but like we have one for the Veterans Memorial, we have one for the pickleball courts in Roslyn. I'm not sure if I can remember the other ones off the top of my head, but I just wondered if those were part of the original plan, or we came under budget and decided that there were some other amenities that needed to have the park signage.
Well, we did come in under budget. We had $500,000 budgeted for the project. The original bid was $221,000 in change. We did add a few signs. The Moody pickleball court sign, we did receive a donation for the cost of that sign. And the other two were recommended that we added. We're going to be moving into that phase 2 of the sign project, so that we're going to be adding like the Edina Veterans Memorial at that point anyway. So we went ahead with this round so we could get them installed before the end of the year.
Susan, my question on the signs, the only thing I was surprised to see is I thought we had talked about maybe doing the enterprises differently, but I saw that they do have a sign by the Edina Pool and by the Dome, Braemar Dome, Courtney Fields. So I wasn't sure if we were gonna. I thought at one point when we talked about making them more industrial looking, as I looked at them, business signs, and we said, well, maybe we would do those for the enterprises if that was different.
Well, we didn't include most of the signs for our enterprise facilities. So we didn't do one for the aquatic center. It's strictly Roslyn Park, were the signs that we added there. The sign for the Golf Dome was falling down. It actually was in really rough shape. So it was recommended to us to go ahead and replace that particular sign in this phase of the project. And then, Matt, actually to answer the other part of your question that I didn't answer, not all of the signs are going to have an address bar. That secondary set of signs, we just included the name of the park. Those are installed at kind of the secondary entrances of the park where people will walk to the park or bike in. So that was a decision we made to not include that address bar.
Okay, good. Well, I think I think the maintenance team installed them. Is that right, or who ended up installing?
The Geograph Industries did do the installation of all the signs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we removed all of the old signs.
Well, nature helped.
Yeah, nature did help.
Right. Well, they look great. So good job, great work, Susan, and pass that on to your team as well, even if they didn't install them, if they had anything to do with them. Any other comments? Okay. Oh, Greg?
I've only got one thing to share. I and maybe others get this as well on occasion, but on a regular occasion, inquiries about what's happening after Tin Fish, right? And I think it kind of maybe layers in as we now hear some of the discussion around, well, we might not have the golf course open next year. So. And one I heard just recently from a resident that was bundling with that is, as you consider putting a new restaurant in there, will there also be a consideration of upgrading the golf clubhouse? Is that something that the city might be interested in doing altogether? So just wanted to kind of pass that along as kind of chatter that I hear as I go to holiday parties and such. If only I had a membership somewhere.
Okay, good. Well, I'll turn it over to Anne for the staff comments.
Thank you very much. I do have quite a few updates for you this evening. We have an awful lot going on in the department, and I want to make sure that you know everything that's going on. But first of all, I would like to address Greg's question and comment. I did have it on my list of things to talk about when I got to golf, but we did finalize a request for proposal for a new restaurant vendor today. And we will be advertising that this week. And we will have a deadline of later in January for those proposals to be submitted. So we're excited to get that process rolling. We'll see how the whole process plays out. We'll see how many proposals we receive. It would be our goal to have a new vendor in place sometime this summer. So that's what we're shooting for.
Is there any requirements in that about the type of food? I mean, I eat sushi, but I can't imagine a sushi restaurant as like a vendor. I mean, it would be something similar to like Tin Fish or what we used to have with the Braemar Grill that has more of like an American fare.
We did not specify the type of food that we would like to see at the restaurant, but we did talk about we would like it to be some typical food that you'd find at a golf course, but also leaving it open. And that can certainly be part of how we go about selecting a vendor, is what type of food that they serve there. Regarding the clubhouse, we do not have any additional plans to upgrade the clubhouse, but we have over the last, well, not in the last couple of years, but prior to that, a couple years, we did internal renovations to the clubhouse, and we did some significant external renovations to the clubhouse as well. Not to say that that building is going to last forever, but we just did not have it in our financial plan with the improvements that we've made at the golf course itself, the practice facilities, the dome. We need to pay for our primary golf experiences through our golf revenues first. So hopefully it will be a tremendous success, and at some point we will be able to talk about replacing that building, but I think it's going to be a little ways down the road. Some other updates. First of all, Grandview. The city is reviving the discussion regarding new construction on Edina's former public works site in the Grandview district in 2018. The site, as you know, has been vacant since the Public Works Department relocated to a modern facility on Metro Boulevard in 2010. In 2014 to 16, the city selected Franchu Commercial Real Estate after interviewing several developers interested in partnering with the city. While the initial study yielded a great deal of comments and suggestions, the city council did not take action, due in part to the high cost of a new public facility and parking that was associated with that. In early of December of this year, the Edina HRA renewed the partnership with Franchu with the intention of bringing forward a new proposal that delivers a more cost-effective combination of public and private elements on this 3.3-acre site. The staff and developers participated in a kickoff meeting this week, led by the architects and planners. This new effort is based on the 7 guiding principles adopted for the Grandview District from 2012 to 2016 planning studies and the collection of past input. The elements currently being discussed include a new home for the Art Center, the possibility of new active adult or public market space for Edina, outdoor green space, shared parking, and new multifamily housing. A new concept is anticipated to be presented to neighborhood stakeholders, Planning Commission, and City Council members in late January or early February for discussion. If the concept is of interest to the city, the developers and architects will prepare a full proposal for consideration by mid-2018. So this is something that has just come up very recently, and I wanted to make sure that you are all aware, and we will be talking about this process moving forward.
How does this integrate with the lid proposal?
Very good question, and obviously there is a timing difference with the lid proposal, but we are working in conjunction with the potential planners of the lid to make sure that they would work well together. All right. Regarding correspondence, in January, there's going to be a change in the way that correspondence is going to be handled in your packet, and this is a change that is happening with the City Council as well. Starting in January, correspondence will no longer be included as part of your packet, but correspondence that comes into the city will be emailed to you. So I realize this is a significant change, and I want you to think about your email addresses that you have on record with the city. There are times that we get a lot of correspondence. And so I haven't gone back to look and see if anyone is using a work email address or if you might want to consider having a generic Gmail, but that is a change.
So to clarify, they wouldn't be bundled like they are now prior to the meeting. You'd send them to us as you get them.
That's a good question, and I think we could look at that. The way that it is going to work, we're still working out all of the final details, and I would love to take that type of input. We believe that the way it's going to work, and Janet, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe the way it's going to work is when correspondence come in, it's going to be funneled through Janet, and then Janet will send it out. So if you want to wait to have things bundled for a certain period of time, it's not obviously often that we get hundreds of email correspondence, but it seems like it's happened a couple times a year. Winter recreation, absolutely. Fred Richards, yeah. Arden Park. So yeah, I guess it's happened a few times. So just give that a little bit of thought. I realize it's a significant change. As I mentioned, the City Council is making the same change. So we can talk about that again in January when it's more formal. A few updates for different departments and divisions. I already mentioned the Braemar Golf Course request for proposal. We're very anxious, and we've already received a fair amount of interest in the project, so we look forward to getting that on the street. Braemar Driving Range was selected for the second year in a row as a Gulf Range Association of America's Top 50 Driving Range in the public category, so we'll be receiving an award for that again, I believe in January. We had a breakfast with Santa last weekend at the golf course clubhouse. We had over 200 people in attendance. We get questions a lot about what does your golf course staff do during the winter? We have a lot of things going on at the golf course. We have an indoor bags league that's going to be starting in January. We've got winter junior camps that are going to be starting in December and January. Junior development starts in January. Snag, which is starting new at golf, starts in late January. Adult lessons begin in late January, and demo days begin in February. Park maintenance, we started construction of our outdoor rinks last Wednesday. Our goal is to have rinks open by the 18th, which is next Monday. We will have information on the city's website with updates for our rinks. That's a new thing this year with our new website. So definitely have people watch our website for those changes. Our park maintenance staff begins work at 4 in the morning. Sometimes they come in even earlier than that for the month of December to get their ice built. So it's an exciting time for our department. Tiffany has hired and trained 55 park shelter attendants as well. So it's a big initiative for our entire department. Park maintenance is also working on snow and ice removal, tree trimming, tree preservation requests, and tree inspections. And we're also building a maintenance shed at Pamela Park. At Edinburgh Park in the Aquatic Center, we're coming up on our pre-New Year's Eve party on Friday, December 28th. It'll be from 5 to 8 p.m. This is an annual event, incredibly popular for families. It's a great multi-generational event. We'll have DJ, dancing, Adventure Peak, photo booth, noisemaker, party hats, crowns for the children. And I believe we have like a kickoff to New Year's Eve, typically like at 8 p.m. at the end of the night. So it's really fun, and all the little kids can get home in time for bed. Aquatic Center season passes are available. It's actually a very popular time of year for us to sell season passes for holiday gifts. The Art Center, we have a new initiative this year. The Edina Art Center and the 50th and France Business Association have partnered to present the Winter Market at the Edina 5-0 Mall on 4 Saturdays in late November and December. It's been very, very well received. The Winter Market is a pop-up featuring artists making jewelry, scarves, mittens, homemade food items, candles, holiday gifts ideas. So far the sales have been really strong. It's been a great partnership. We're working at the Art Center for programming for new classes for spring and summer in 2018. We have a lot of good new ideas. We're looking forward to that programming. In January, Barbara Lavalure, who was an Arts and Culture Commission member for many years, is opening a photo gallery for her trip to Cuba, and that will be opening on January 4th of 2018. Braemar Arena, we're hosting 3 large events in December. The first one is the Holiday Classic High School Boys Hockey Tournament. That is this Thursday through Saturday. Some would consider this to be the premier regular season tournament in the state. In addition to Edina, we have Eden Prairie, Elk River, Grand Rapids participating. The high school goals program will then host the Walzer Invitational Tournament December 26th to 28th. And the EHA is hosting the Edina Invitational Tournament December 27th through January 1st.
Did any of those tournaments apply, or are they going to now with the new concession? Well, the ability to be able to serve beer and wine during those tournaments. Are they doing that, or are they not allowed to because it's the youth?
No, they are not. That was really put in for the Beauty League a couple of years ago, so there really isn't any intention to try to sell alcohol for regular season tournaments. Braemar Field will be hosting 2 Super Bowl related events. The first one is on January 18th. It's the Super Kids Super Sharing event, where people will be asked to contribute books, school supplies, sporting equipment, and games, and then it will be donated to kids in need in the area. It's been a very, very popular event that's happened at past Super Bowls. And on February 1st, we're also going to be hosting a middle school football camp that's associated with the Super Bowl. And just a couple things in recreation. We will be hosting a Skate with Santa on Saturday, December 16th at Braemar Arena. We have our annual Glow Dodgeball Night at Braemar Field on Tuesday, January 2nd. We have 4-man hockey starting on December 20th. We have 11 teams in 2 different leagues. We are working with a local youth wrestling program, and they've started for the season. They have 34 wrestlers between 4 and 11 years old. And then lastly, just to get into a little bit more detail about the Hennepin Youth Sports Grant that we applied for. We applied in conjunction with the Edina Baseball Association. They have offered to donate $100,000 toward a $290,000 project, which would replace the lighting on Field 1 at Courtney and some safety netting. So the city did not have any matching funds for this cycle, so we applied for a $190,000 grant through the Hennepin Youth Sports Foundation. We saw it on their agenda for approval this evening, not for the full $190,000, but for just shy of $140,000. So that would be a great match and a great partnership with Hennepin County and the Baseball Association. So we'll be looking for finalization of that grant hopefully tomorrow. We were one of 17 applications for approximately $1.8 million in total funding. Thank you.
And can I ask you 2 questions on things you mentioned? One, I was trying to find, because I've been asked numerous times about when they're opening the ice. So I was trying to look on the website of where you said it's going to be posted in terms of the ice. So if you can just tell me where to find that link, I couldn't seem to find it myself.
If you go to our Parks and Recreation page, do you know what it says? It says something like updates. It's right underneath the picture. Right on the very top.
And then the other question I had was around Grandview. Are they going to include within that project some form of traffic assessment? Because that was and is still a big concern of that area, because it's already such a bottleneck within even just having a lot of traffic there for Hilltop. Is that are there? I feel like that's where we got to with this Grandview project before, and then all of a sudden it was like we never got to the traffic assessment. So I just want to make sure that is being included up front before we repeat the same process.
Certainly. I can't speak to the traffic assessment portion of it. I apologize. That would typically be something that would be involved in a process like this. I can certainly get that question answered for you.
Thank you.
And piggybacking on that, we were involved, I think, the last time. Is there an expectation that the Park and Rec Commission would be
I am not. You will not be me.
recommending commission on this, or is there been a change in the, I guess, for lack of a better term, ownership of the commission? That's
it's very safe to say that the Parks and Rec Commission and the Arts and Culture Commission will be involved in the process. We are at a 30,000-foot level view right now. We are, from a department standpoint, we're looking at roughly how many thousands of square feet we would be looking at for a facility and what we might like to include in it. So the larger initiative is how to fit this whole potential development into this site. If it moves forward in the next 2 to 4 months, then definitely the Parks and Rec Commission and the Arts and Culture Commission would be involved.
And sorry, again, the lid is one question. The other question is that now there's a private firm that's bought the old bus garage. So would they be part of this consideration, or would they be integrated in any way? Because I know that we talked about this at one point too. With the hard part is the train track, obviously, but I just didn't know if they would be brought along in the process as well.
That is a completely separate development that construction will be significantly ahead in that project, but certainly knowing what is going in on that space will help to direct what we would want and how things would work with this site. But they're not partners at the table at this stage of the game.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Great overview of all the things happening. So with that takes us to the adjournment. And before we do that, I just want to wish everybody a very happy and safe holiday season. And then we'll reconvene in the new year. But if I can have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.